might well be that they didn't rule him out for great reasons so much as
they just pursued other suspects.
They found somebody they liked better, and so they just dropped Stan. And as for him, he died in 1987. As you said, Steve, they took some tissue samples before they buried him or cremated him,
whatever they did with his body.
Yeah, and so those are still around. They might be helpful someday in solving the crime. So far, they haven't been. But anyway, we'll set him aside as a possible theory for our perp, and we'll move on to another perp here. But first, before we do that, let's take a break.
The Perfect Obsession, Life of Lies, The Executioner, Lie to Me, Marked for Revenge, The Coldest Fear, Race Against Time, The Ultimatum, Deep Graves, Hoodwinked Hearts.
I like that one.
If any of these titles sounded familiar to you, or interesting to you, you might be a fan of Hanover Square Press titles. They are also the publisher of The Innocent Wife, an international best-selling novel by Amy Lloyd that tells the story of a young schoolteacher who falls in love with a man on death row whom she believes is falsely accused. 20 years ago, he was arrested for the murder of somebody in Florida's Red River County, but now he's the subject of a true crime documentary, you like those, that's taking the world by storm. The filmmakers are whipping up a frenzy to uncover the truth and free the victim of a gross miscarriage of justice. And though Samantha is 1,000 miles away in England, she is invested in his case as any of his lawyers. Perhaps more so, as her letters to the convicted killer grow more intimate. Ooh. After their marriage and his release, events begin to suggest that he may not be as innocent as it seems. A compelling tale of obsession, perfect for true crime addicts, The Innocent Wife is available now, wherever books are sold.
And we're back. Okay, our next theory or suspect, a man named Teet Harm.
Ugh.
Yeah, great name. Harm, I know.
Is there an umlaut or is there...
There is an umlaut, so it's probably more like, over the A, there's an umlaut. So under Swedish pronunciation rules, I have no idea what that is.
I have no idea.
Me either, sorry.
I have seen his name spelled so many ways that I was unsure.
Yeah, so it might be Harm or Horm or something. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Probably not just harm.
Probably not.
That's the way it's spelled and pronounced in English.
In the English pronunciation. So let's talk about Mr.
We'll just call him Teet Harm. Well, he was a forensic pathologist who was working at the Karolinska Institute. Name sounds familiar. That's near where the initial bag of body parts was found. In Stockholm. That was in, of course, 1984. The body parts, the second bag was actually found less than a mile away, as I said, and it turns out the Karolinska Institute was in between those two places.
It
was bracketed by those two places. Okay. Yeah, and physically. And he was a consultant sometimes with the police on murders and suspicious deaths because his specialty. He was
a forensic pathologist, so that makes sense.
Yeah, a forensic pathologist. His specialty was death by strangulation.
Oh.
Yeah, he was.
So we're kind of talking like a Dexter situation.
Yeah, kind of like that. Okay. Or, when the tabloids try to make it as kind of a Hannibal Lecter kind of situation, where he was like this. He totally helped the police solve crimes. He was brilliant and solved many, many murders, but it turned out, he was
because he was constantly killing people on his own.
Yeah, behind the scenes, he was busy slaughtering people left and right himself. According to the tabloids, not necessarily in real life.
I just realized I never finished Dexter.
I didn't either. I stopped watching mid.
I think I made it to season. We've talked about this before. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry. That was just a train of thought.
Yeah, I can tell you how it ends if you want.
That's okay. I don't need you to.
Okay.
No spoilers, thanks.
Okay, well, anyway, just go back and watch it. Actually, what happens is he kills everybody.
Oh, okay.
And so that's about the end of it. Yeah.
And then analyzes their blood spatter.
Yeah. So back to Teet Harm. The fact that he had this sort of morbid specialty didn't really play well with the public, as you can imagine. Yeah. And what happened is that essentially somebody called the police after the body was found. It was all chopped up. Somebody called the police. It turns out it was his former father-in-law who called the police on him. Yeah. And suggested that he would be a viable suspect. And before that, he was not actually on the police's radar at all. The reason his father-in-law apparently had never liked him to begin with, but then his wife's name was Anne Catherine, and she died in 1982. She was found strangled to death in their bedroom.
Yeah. Well, not officially.
Yeah. Well, she officially hanged herself.
Correct.
But as often happens with amateur hangings, people wind up strangling themselves.
So death by asphyxiation.
If you do it right, you
snap the neck.
You snap your neck.
Yeah.
But if you don't, well, you choke to death.
Yeah, which is horrible.
Yeah, well, it definitely would prolong the situation for a bit. Yeah. So she was found hanging from the side of her bed with a cord around her neck. And it looked as though one of the things that was odd about it is she was, according to the press, dressed up for a night out.
I'm sorry, hanging from the side of her bed?
Yeah. I think that this was not, like the 4-poster bed kind of thing is how I'm picturing this had to be. Something that had the tall corner posts and maybe even the crossbars up high, like that kind of bed.
It could have been that.
Like a princess bed.
A lot of suicides by hanging, too, they're actually not dangling over the ground. They're actually partly contacting the ground, even.
Right. Well, when we've talked about that, but I imagine that if she was in a situation where she didn't break her neck and she was, God, we've gone over this so many times. If she is, she's strangling, any purchase is purchase, so I gotta feel that it was something that was above head height
for
her
that's
to
my
be
question
suspended
too, right?
from.
Yeah. And that been actually because she was divorcing him, which is often considered a murder motive.
But what you said was, everybody said, well, she was dressed up for a night on the town, but it is not uncommon for people to say, I would like to look my best
when going
on my last day.
Sure. And put on all the makeup, do your hair up right, put on your best dress, and then kill yourself. Sure, absolutely. But that did seem a little strange, and of course the papers printed that, which things look so good for Teet Harm. Police also said that his behavior at the time seemed a little callous, but you never know. I mean, they were divorcing. It might have been all the fun had gone out of the relationship, and so maybe he wasn't.
If he's a forensic pathologist, though, he is around death.
That's true too.
To have a thick enough skin to be around that kind of stuff all the time and have it not bother you probably means that you have the equivalent of the British stiff upper lip. And so when it's your wife that dies, nobody knows what you're feeling because you are just putting on your work face.
I don't know. Just, I guess I would say, we're not, right, these forensic pathologists. We don't go see dead bodies all the time, but we talk about death a lot. But I would say that having a recent death and experiencing a recent death of somebody that was close to me,
that's a little different.
It's totally different.
Yeah,
it's totally different to this person. It's like, oh, that's just a dead body. That's, whatever. Not to be callous, but that's whatever, to somebody that you have an emotional connection, whether it be kind of tenuous and crappy.
I'm not saying that this guy wasn't a ghoul. I mean, he may very well have been.
But it's hard to tell. There's such a spectrum there, right? Where it's either, I don't know. But again, if it were the police who worked closely with him saying, I don't know, it seemed like he was really unaffected by it, it would seem like they would know what unaffected by it would mean.
Listen, the police were really after this guy, too. So that's going to color some stuff.
Fair.
People's recollections often change in retrospect.
True, yeah.
Quite often.
Yeah, that's fair.
And again, it's hard to say. I mean, people act differently in situations like this. So hard to say if that means much of anything, but that was definitely counted as kind of a reason to be a little suspicious of him. But anyway, in the end, there was really no evidence of murder, so it was declared a suicide, and the whole thing was dropped. But of course, the in-laws didn't forget it.
Of course not. It was their daughter who died.
Yeah.
And so the father-in-law did call the police, and that's when, of course, he got on their radar. And they did a little research into it. It turned out they found that he likes apparently violent pornography, which I'm not so sure what that means. That could be some of these.
That means it could. Yeah, that's
a whole range. It's a whole range of
things.
This
is pre-internet, remember? So it's not as if they can check your browsing history. You buy it. In that day and age, it would be a tape.
Yeah, I guess.
So he might have had 2 pornos, and one of them was pretty rough and tumble.
Maybe,
right.
Yeah.
But and that's where I would say, in an internet age, right? We all do that, click through, right? Where you just find yourselves in this
in the spiral.
Oh my God! Why was I looking at that? That was awful. Yeah. What is going on? But in this day and age, you would have to seek that out.
Well, not maybe. I mean, like
probably.
Listen. I have seen plenty of porno VHS tapes, and they don't always give away that they are all about bondage and beating.
Sure.
They may look like the run-of-the-mill naked people going at it, and then you get home and you're like, oh, God, I paid $40 for this, and they don't let you return the tape.
I'm so glad that you've just admitted spending $40 on
I have no idea what a VHS used I just stole them. I don't know what they cost.
Okay.
So anyway, I don't know if they maybe found some porn in his possessions when they searched his place.
Who knows?
Or maybe they just talked to associates and found this stuff out. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it might be, too. I don't know if they did find some porn tapes in his house. Did they find one or two? Or did they find 50
Fox Mulder level collection?
Yeah. I mean,
didn't he also like to engage with prostitutes?
He did. He was he actually when he was when he spoke to police, they asked him if he knew Catherine or any of the other prostitutes, and he said he'd only done it once, and that was after he'd had an argument with his wife and things were kind of bad, so he'd gone to a prostitute once. But when they showed his picture along with some other suspected perps to the prostitutes in the area down there, and a bunch of them, like 4 dozen, picked his picture out.
Wow.
So apparently it turns out he was kind of a regular down there. He kind of lied to them. But
those women really knew who he was.
They apparently did, yeah.
And that makes that really does point the finger at him. Well, if all these people are saying, oh, yeah, no, he's down here all the time.
Well, it doesn't point the finger, but sort of a finger.
A finger.
Yeah.
And it puts him in proximity to, how do you say her name?
Catherine.
Catherine.
Yeah. It puts him in the area where she was known to hang out.
Yeah.
And obviously the police don't like being lied to. Cops are very twitchy about that kind of thing.
Which is weird.
Yeah, they don't seem to feel like they have to tell me the truth. I call the FBI and ask them for information. They won't tell me squat.
Yeah.
And,
I don't know. The FBI agent that's assigned to watch me through my camera has been pretty sad lately, but whatever.
They have to keep cycling in nuance for me because they either get committed or they commit suicide.
Yeah,
because they're bored out of their minds.
Oh my God! All this guy does is talk to his freaking cat. Anyway, that's it. The FBI equivalent of Siberia is having to listen to me. But he was arrested, and when they found all this stuff about him, he was arrested in December 1984. His house was searched. They did find a knife.
Oh my God!
I know.
A knife?
What the hell?
No!
What was he doing with a knife?
No.
Yeah, and
no respectable human owns a knife.
No, I wouldn't own a knife.
No, nor would I.
I have one, but it's designated only to cut up produce.
Yeah.
No, it's a tiny little paring knife, isn't it?
Yeah, my philosophy
is it is, you freak.
There's just nothing.
A giant knife for cutting potatoes.
It's just a weapon of murder, and in my opinion. In my opinion, there is nothing you can do with a knife that you cannot do with a gun. So, I mean, why would you have a knife?
Really?
Yeah. I mean, why?
Joe shoots all of his
I was going to say, this is why we don't eat at Joe's house ever.
Yeah.
There may be some bullet fragments in there. Sorry, everyone.
I gotta go prepare the steak, guys. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. Okay, it's tenderized. All right, let's go. But there really actually was not any evidence. So, even the knife, the incriminatory knife, there was no evidence. They had to let him go. And maybe he did it, maybe not. So, again, let's summarize the arguments for his guilt. He'd probably come into contact with Catherine at some point. Since he had hung out down there, he might have.
Because they were in the same neighborhoods looking to exchange the same things.
Yeah, and so he may well have had done business with her even. As a pathologist, he would have the tools and the know-how to chop her body up.
Yeah.
True.
He was an expert on strangulation, which might have been the cause of death, although we don't really know that. It could have been blunt force trauma or a gunshot to the head. I don't know. Again, if he's the world's leading expert on strangulation, does that mean you have to strangle your murder victims, or would you consider it wiser to shoot them in the head? How would that work?
Knowing how to do something and wanting to do something are two very different things. It's just like saying that he knows all about something doesn't mean that he's also the one that turns around and then slices them up into itsy bitsy pieces.
Yeah, like I know people who are butchers, for example. That doesn't mean they're murderers.
I was going to say that I went to school for costume design. My freshman year, we were doing a play that required the distressing of a butcher's apron. And my costume design professor, for whatever reason, was like, hey, can you distress this? And I was like, sure. She's like, I want some blood spatter on there. And I was like, okay. And I did some, and she was like, how do you know what jugular splatter looks like, though? And I was like, I don't. I was just putting blood splatter on there. I'm sorry. And she was okay, I'm never going to ask you to do that ever again. I'm sorry.
No, what you should have just said is, I had no idea. I just started cutting on the homeless dude. And this is what came out,
Yeah, that's why she's not in that industry anymore.
Yeah, well, next time you know what to say, all right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, and there was one other thing, is that they talked, of course, they're going to always talk to everybody, colleagues, acquaintances, friends, whatever.
Right.
A lot of people, apparently, including some of the women down the red light district, said they didn't like him. They thought he was kind of scary and creepy. But then again,
I feel like you can't 100% discount that gut feeling that people have about people,
Yeah,
but you also can't rely on it when you're being pushed on by the police about, is this guy a total scumbag?
Yeah. Well, but I think it's like it's that weird, like, you can use that to fuel who you might investigate.
Yeah,
if everybody says
influencing.
Yeah, I mean, I think if everybody who you're interviewing says, no, he seemed really creepy and weird, you might go with that suspect more.
Yeah, no, it would make sense. It would probably influence your investigation just a little bit. If all these people have a bad feeling about this guy.
The problem with Teed Harm is he's what I would consider a victim of what somebody wrote to us today in our timeline, not when this podcast released timeline, is the phenomenon of locking in and locking out.
Yeah.
Locking in on your subject and therefore locking out all other information that might prove that that's wrong.
Yeah, all they care about is whatever little factoid fits their theory.
Right. Oh, this, beautiful. That, no, that doesn't matter. This, yes. No, the rest of that is all garbage. Get it out of here.
I know. I mean, because and definitely, I tend to do the same thing, and like even on our podcast, I tend to pay more focused attention on the things that confirm the theory that I have.
Yeah.
And of course,
it's confirmation bias.
Yeah, and if I get enough information, then I will change up my theory. I'm not that bad, I hope, but definitely, things that come to my attention that make me right.
I recently found an infographic that I'll share with you guys later, but it was all of these different kind of biases that people have that are underlying.
Yeah, there's a lot.
And I was really interested to kind of think about, like, apparently people also give bias to, like, if the information is more recent, they give more weight to it, which is crazy.
That makes no sense.
Because it's breaking news.
But that's true. Apparently, and then also you look for the information that will confirm what you believe. Yeah. So it's confirmation bias.
And there are certainly areas where the most recent information is the best, like, say, market economics or real estate, obviously. But, or like
murder,
not so
or
much.
Science.
All right,
but maybe murder, maybe
So according to, we're talking about our vampire doctor.
Oh, yeah, our mad vampire doctor. Yeah, let's see. What else we got? Besides him being creepy, what else? Of course, the body parts were found close to where he worked.
And every good idiot knows, dump the body parts by your job.
Yeah, just on your way to work. Just chuck them out the car window. Yeah,
that's what I do with apple cores all the time.
Yeah, totally. So we got so that's
do it
the
all the time.
Yeah. But the Weekly World News, so you've probably heard of them. They're a pretty respectable tabloid. And they, in April 1988, they published an article about him. And they came up with some extra information. They called him the Mad Vampire Doc. And you guys have seen the article.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It said that he had committed at least 6 other, quote, vampire slayings, unquote, besides Catherine. And they were definitely vampire. He had according to them, he had a secret stash of 20 human brains in his freezer at home.
So I appreciate that you were including this for the comic relief of, oh my God, the Weekly World News. But this is just such slanderous garbage.
It's awful.
Oh yeah, he is. But I thought I'd just toss it in so you get a sort of a flavor for how nuts this case became.
No, it is a great example of how far this thing went off the rails.
I've read comments from certain Swedish citizens who said they consider this case to have been a national embarrassment for the way the police handled the trial and everything, and then the way they built their case against Teed. And somebody else we're going to find out about here in a moment. The World News said about this. about Catherine. They said he lured her back home or to his morgue and then decapitated her with a power saw and then invited a friend over to, quote, join him in a banquet of human flesh and blood, unquote.
And then they retired to their separate coffins.
Yeah, apparently. And then they did, about a year later, they published another article saying that one of Teet's victims had risen from the dead, was on the brink of becoming a vampire like him.
Because she was a zombie, but she was going to upgrade to vampire status.
Yeah, apparently.
She had enough hit points.
Yeah, and so anyway, so he's a vampire. Okay, we got that. All right, so, well, let's go on to our next theory.
Yeah.
Next perp, or perp. So this perp is a sex.
Pero-perp.
Pero-perp. This is Teet Harm and Thomas Algen.
This is like a